World War II went on from September 1st, 1939 to September 2nd, 1945. What led up to this war was World War I and the Great Depression. Germans had to blame someone for the First War. They decided to blame the Jews. Then Hitler came in power during World War II and tried to invade all of Europe. As Gandhi once said, just as one must learn the art of killing in the training for violence, so one must learn the art of dying in the training for non-violence. Violence does not mean emancipation from fear, but discovering the means of combating the cause of fear. Direct action seeks to create such crisis and foster such tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue, said by MLK. In 1940, a 17-year-old named Arne Surge created the 10 Commandments of Danes, in which he described the characteristics that make up a good Dane. His leaflet called for a refusal to work for Germans, minimal effort in assisting Germans, the destruction of German machinery and tools, a boycott of German goods, and providing protections for anyone oppressed by Germans. Although this document started off as a pamphlet to be distributed to local leaders, it eventually became an essential representation of Danish resistance to Nazis. Although the Nazi demanded that nothing be published by Danish newspapers and journals without prior German approval, by 1941, an underground press was spreading anti-German publication. By 1943, illegal publications reached a total circulation of 2.6 million copies. As a result, sabotage increased, workers began to strike. Danish ship workers went on strike, walked off from their jobs. German troops responded by putting in place a curfew. Germans provided Danish government with an ultimatum prohibiting strikes, public meetings of 5 or more persons, and any private meetings in closed rooms. They censorship, did everything to prevent any kind of uprising, and would put in place punishments for any infraction. A strong national identity was born through singing of songs, remembrance of 1864 war against Germany, and their valor really united the country during these tough times. The German troops responded to these strikes with increased arrests, violence, and heightened numbers of German troops. Danish police were arrested for failing to stop sabotage, and the German troops took over controlling cities of Denmark. In response to the arrest of police workers, the Danish Freedom Council called for another nationwide strike to take place later that week. However, when the word of the plan became known, Danes united and spread warnings to the members of the Jewish population. The Danes offered their homes and offices as hiding spots for the Jews. After a German decree declared that all non-Jews turn over the Jews to authorities, it became clear that Jews were no longer safe hiding in Denmark. Fishermen volunteered to move the Jews to Sweden and neighboring countries as well. Denmark's ultimate goals were to refuse to assist the Nazi war machine using non-violent means. This could be anything from hiding Jews, sabotage of machinery and tools, walking out on work or refusal to work, bombing of roads to block roads, slow down the police arrests, boycotts of goods, anti-publication in the press, nationwide resistance, anything to slow down Germans' progression in invading all of Europe. Eventually, the Danish government refused, and the following day the German troops occupied key facilities, arrested influential figures of the resistance, such as professors and newspaper editors. There was a complete military takeover by the Germans. Even with all this going on, Denmark was still not giving up and still resisting to the very end. Of course, conditions in Denmark were not great. They were being invaded by German troops. They were being violently killed, oppressed, hunting out Jews, and overall just taken over. There were very many non-violent resistant strategies that were put in place. Although their non-violent methods of resistance had not ended the occupation, through this resistance the Danes achieved several goals. Primarily protected Danish Jews maintained the sovereignty of their nation, and limited the amount of resources that Germany was able to draw from Denmark. The campaign spread from small resistance groups and individual factories to hundreds of factories and the entire nation's population. The explanation of the event. Denmark had no other options because they were outnumbered, a neutral country, and cut their military in half right before. The only way they could fight against Germany was to undermine them and not aid them. Quoting Deming, because human rights of the adversary are respected, though his actions, his official policies are not, the focus of attention becomes those actions, those policies, and their true nature. The issue cannot be avoided. The explanation of the event. Denmark had no other options because they were outnumbered, a neutral country, and cut their military in half right before. The only way they could fight against Germany was to undermine them and not aid them. So a little bit about myself. Me and my dad are originally born in France. My grandpa, so his dad, actually joined the French resistance when that was happening in World War II. His dad was 17 or 18 years old when he joined the resistance. It was very underground, hush-hush, very dangerous. And even my grandpa's mom was involved, but they didn't give much detail to my dad. So this is what he told me. He told me that, so my grandpa's mother, she owned a restaurant, actually hid Americans in her attic at the restaurant, especially US pilots who got shot down by German forces. My grandpa even helped bomb roads on purpose to block German tracks to getting into France. So that was a very non-violent way of fighting back. Then later on, a few years later, when he turned 21 years old, my grandpa actually joined the French army when taking back France from German control. So the beginning of Normandy. Later on, my grandfather got awarded medals for his honor, for his bravery, and just as a thank you overall. So that's my history. So I can kind of relate to the Danish resistance.